Under the Skin, adapted from a novel of the same name, in development for nearly a decade and finally released in 2013, is the third feature film by Jonathan Glazer and probably his unsung masterpiece. Not only is it one of the greatest achievements in recent science fiction, but also a stunningly beautiful contemplation on humanity as a whole. Now, the beauty of this film lies in its simplicity and effectiveness, which on the one hand is represented in its appearance, its form, structure, and style, and on the other hand is personified in Laura herself, Scarlett Johansson's lead character, as she is designed to be just as beautiful and efficient when it comes to seducing those men for her handlers or caretakers. I truly admire the choices Glazer made to show less plot elements, skip exposition completely, and instead focus on atmosphere, mood, and feeling. The very opening of the film is a great example for the stylistic simplicity. It is never really clear what Laura is, if she is an alien herself or some kind of AI constructed by aliens, but we see her being built or possibly born out of nothingness. And apparently the filmmakers plan to show this in a fully realized scene depicting the whole process of her putting on the skin and learning to speak our language. But those who have seen the film know they've abandoned that plan in favor of an artistic solution to tell the exact same content in an abstract way. So all you see at first are flickers of light in absolute black, as if the medium film itself is being born. These few bright spots, merely bigger than film grain, then turn into circular shapes reminiscent of planets in alignment or flying saucers in formation, which would fit into the movie's genre, but only in the last few seconds of the sequence do we realize what we witness is the construction of a human eye that now fills the whole screen and, in contrast to the black and white shapes before it, has a striking impact on the viewer. Even recalling the final moments of La Jetée, the short film that served as an inspiration for 12 Monkeys and ended with the only moving image, a human eye, after a series of black and white stills. Of course, it also reminds us of another classic sci-fi film, which I have discussed before, as both Blade Runner and its sequel, Blade Runner 2049, start with the extreme close-up of an all-seeing eye, God's eye, watching and maybe objectively judging human behavior. But this eye, in Under the Skin, Laura's eyes, are cold. As cold as winter in Scotland and as cold as the death they bring with them. A window into a soulless abyss, if you will. With her human appearance completed, she is then taught English, especially the accent, to communicate with her victims. Again, this is not told in a regular fashion through expository scenes, but only in voiceover from Scarlett Johansson repeating certain noises, syllables, then words over and over again. D, da, da. Film, films. This right there tells you everything you need to know. You understand the progression. It's an elegant reduction to the absolute necessary and therefore, if deciphered by the viewer, gives everything more weight and bigger appeal. Ironically, this moment in particular, her learning English, basically deals with humanity's most important means of interaction. Communication through language, while the film, however, uses dialogue very sparingly except for the occasional small talk when Laura picks up her victims. Many of the scenes are completely silent and instead concentrate on the incredible soundscapes and ominous score by Mica Levi. This lack of speech, this thoughtful silence, makes for a rather unusual and at times uncomfortable, albeit compelling and fascinating viewing experience, which is further enforced in the cinematography. The shots are static and mundane, while some of the footage was even filmed with hidden cameras and integrates actual civilians on location into the story, like many of the street scenes, the nightclub, or the shopping mall. The editor literally had weeks of raw footage from the hidden cameras alone at his disposal. And those parts blend in so naturally with the written scenes that most of the time you can't differentiate between fiction and real life, actors and real people. Which only goes to show that every one of us is acting all the time anyway. We can't live a social life without acting towards others, representing ourselves in a certain way, putting up a facade and so on. Always carefully choosing what to show and what to hide of the things inside us. So when it comes down to 100% certainty, the only thing we can really grasp about other people's existence is external, is physical. We relate, we attack, we might abuse, or express gestures of mercy, compassion, and acts of kindness, like when a stranger falls down on the street and is lifted up again by pedestrians walking by. Laura is the perfect blank slate to make that point, a walking Kuleshov effect, if you will. Because in the beginning she shows absolutely no emotion, no reaction at all, like a kind of mirror which reflects the behavior of others on her. Piece by piece she then takes on certain character traits, or at least mimics them, tries them on for size. So through all the means we just elaborated on, through language, through action, through touch of another human, she ultimately seems to be able to make a connection, and her being, her actions become more and more indistinguishable from ours. I think the film also emphasizes that outer appearance alone is a false indicator, as she is strikingly beautiful right from the start, but there is nothing inside her yet to relate to, not for us as a viewer and not for other people around her. The opposite case is represented in the deformed man who, by society's standard, for physical beauty shouldn't attract her, but Laura shows an exceptional interest in him, admiring his hands, leading them to her face, and eventually even releasing him from his prison cell. A further example for internal longing and external connection is found in the first two victims who meet in that underwater-like chamber. They try to reach out and touch hands, but one of them is already emptied out and nothing more than floating skin. So, in one of the most frightening moments in cinema history, he suddenly gets sucked into the wall and his whole substance, his every cell, disappears in a flash, leaving him hollow. Now, all of them desired contact, like we do as humans. But as Laura learns when she follows the man who falls in love with her into bed, we can't ever really be inside another person, and all of the sexual behavior is just the denial of that fact. Shocked by this revelation, she gets up and hastily uses a light to search for her genitals in the dark, but finds nothing. The same kind of nothingness our journey originated from, and where it inevitably ends. 'Cause with her body being destroyed in the climactic scene, the mask finally comes off. And it reveals no person, barely an entity, only a void. But in its last breath, as that black creature looks upon its broken face and the face of humanity looks back at it, you can't help feeling the slightest hint of wonderment. A spark, perhaps? We did see glimpses of human behavior in her as she felt sorry, got angry, or ran away in pure fright. In that moment she clearly did fear for her own life, so she must have had one, right? If you look at it psychoanalytically, the ending certainly shows that there is now absence. Her caretaker stands on top of the mountain, looking for something that isn't there anymore. So with her destruction, or death if we grant that term, there is a kind of loss. And that is what I love, what I absolutely adore about this film. The suggestion of the undefined, at first glance seemingly alien, which still is inherent in all of us. When we see her ashes ascending to heaven, it seems final, but still leaves us with a realization that we, as sentient beings, so-called members of the human race, are gruesome, we are loving, we are here and only here, and we are lost. Yet we are also unique, one of a kind, snowflakes melting away in front of the camera's lens. And maybe, just maybe, when you look somebody in the eyes, when you touch their skin, you too will find there is something underneath.